Okay, so what I wanted to do in this video is do a demonstration of one of the widgets, the second ones you guys are going to build. So I'm going to pull up a piece of reference. And so I'm going to sculpt this. Now, each one of you will sculpt one of these. Everybody's will be different. So I'm not sculpting the specific one you're doing. I'm just sculpting this one, but the techniques will be the same. You'll have to modify those. So we have to interpret. Okay, so I'm drawing in the front view. I'm going to turn on my snaps, and I want my snaps to grid so that I can draw this. And I'm going to start with, to me, the hardest part of this is the round part. So I'm going to start with a tube to create the round part of this. So I'm giving the tube a specific size and depth. And then I'm going to go over and set some settings in here, modify this so I can get this to the right scale. We want to build things to the right scale. Now, my assumption that this thing is, I don't know, it's about 4 to 6 inches or so. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just be in a range. So I'm going to make it around 6 inches across. So it's got a radius of 6, which I guess actually is going to make us a foot. So it's going to be pretty big. I don't really know what size this bearing. You just got to get it in the range. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so I'm making a shader here. I want a little bit of a specular on it so that we can see our curved parts. And I usually like to throw a little bit of color into it. Doesn't matter what the color, but instead of just being a white specular, put a little color into it. And now I need to give this some depth. Now it has default amount of sides and height segments. I want 6 on my height segments, and I'm going to go for about 24. There's no magic number on this. I want even segments on the side, which will give me a center line. So it defaults to 5. I want a center line because I need to bow this out a little bit. It's kind of a bowed shape. So I want to be able to pick down the side. Okay, I'm doing this front edge here, and it's fairly thin. Of course, all of this can be adjusted a little bit as I go, but try to get it as close as possible when we're working on it. Okay, that looks about right. But one of the things I notice is that it looks like to me it's thinner at the top than is the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to center its pivot point. By default, the cylinder pivots on the back of it, and I want it right down the center of it. So I centered the pivot. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and collapse it to a poly. I don't need the base controls anymore. Okay, so I'm going to grab that center piece, that center edge. I've double clicked on it. And then I'm holding down my control key and click on vertex, and it'll select the vertices. Now what I'm going to do is what's called a soft selection. A soft selection will give me a fall off. So as I scale this out, it'll scale some pieces around it. So I'm kind of, this fall off, the blue is where it's kind of stops. And now I can kind of scale this. And actually I need to go out a little bit further because it's giving me a little bit of a ridge on there. So I'm going to go out a little bit further, maybe like there, and then scale. Yeah, that's what I want. It's kind of tricky. Something right in there. Just a little bit of bow in it is what it's showing. Okay, that looks pretty good. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, let's see. I don't need these inside pieces, so I'm saying select by angle. And then I'm selecting those and deleting those because I don't need the inside piece. I just need the outside piece. Okay, now it looks like to me it's pinched at the little bit at the top. So it looks like it's thicker at the bottom and narrower at the top. So there's several ways I can do that, but what I'm going to do is put a taper on this. A taper is a modifier that allows us to be able to squeeze something one way or the other. Now the trick is just to figure out which way I've got to do this. That looks like that's the correct way, but it's just going the wrong way. So I need to put a negative value in it. And so that's slightly pinching it in the top and having the base a little bit wider. That looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just collapse that in. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm hitting Z on the keyboard is what zooms in on the object. So I'm switching to different viewports to kind of look at it. Viewports is V for viewport, and then you pick which viewport you want to go to. So I'm building in the front viewport, so I'm looking straight on at it. Okay, now I don't need these bottom pieces. Okay. And then I'm going to select these bottom edges, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to pull them down. Because it curves, and then it goes straight down. And that's a little too far. Bring it back up a little bit. Something around in there looks pretty good. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now it's got a little inset in it, so I'm going to draw another tube. To inset inside of that. Now I need to center it to make sure both these arcs center to each other. So I'm doing a little center in there. And then I'm going to increase this so that those pretty much line up to each other. Okay, we want to name our objects as we go. We don't want to leave them with the default names. So I'm just going to call this main model. We always want to name our stuff. You know, in the end, we work as teams. So at any given point, you may have to share this model. So we want to be able to make sure that anybody that would take up the model would actually understand what we're doing. Okay, so I just put the shader back on this. So now I'm just adjusting this to get a little bit of an indent. Okay, I don't need any of the segments on the inside, so I'm going to get rid of those. And that looks pretty good. Now, I'm only really concerned about the front because the back I'm going to mirror. Okay, so what I did there was I attached it together so they're one thing. And now I don't need this outside ring, so I'm picking it and deleting it. Now notice I'm using ignore back facing and by angle, which will pick the whole thing. And that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to bridge it together right there. We'll use off the ribbon. So we'll click on the bridge button, and it'll bridge that together. And then I'm going to bridge this other side. Okay. All right, now I can double click here and double click here, and then I'm holding down the Alt key to deselect the pieces that I don't want. And now I've got all those up there, and I can bridge all those together at one time. Okay. That'll get my little inset that's in there. Okay, let's see. It's a little thick, so I'm just going to grab these and scale these out a little bit to thin it up a little bit. Looks a little bit more like the reference. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now I need some extra divisions on these edges, so I'm going to do a ring, and to select those, and I'm going to do a connect, and I'm going to go to my connect settings so I can tell it how many divisions I want, and I think I want the division set at 2, which will give me 3 sections. So I'm putting 2 lines in there, which will give me 3 divisions, which will allow me to bridge it with the ring down through there. Okay, bridge that. What I want to do is maybe clone these out. So I'll go to the front view and then do a scale to their common center. And hold down the shift key and that'll scale that out. Because I've got to get these pulled out to be even with those edges. All right, so I'm going to put a snap on these, and I've got these onto vertex, and then I've got it snapped by direction, so it will only pull it the direction that I initially pull with the arrow, and then I can snap it so they align to those front edges. And I need to target weld that because that needs to be 1 point. Yeah, like that. I have a tendency a lot of times to do some extra work, which is what I'm doing here, because eventually I'm going to mirror this anyway. So I don't really need to be doing this, but it's kind of just allowing me to kind of work it through my head exactly how I'm going to align this stuff up. Okay, I need to line that from top to bottom. Okay. All right, so now I can bridge that. So, when I'm starting this, I don't have some, preconceived, what the heck's going on here? That's not right. What the heck? Oh, I've got it on edge. Okay. Vertex. I'd switch it to edge. There we go. Okay. So you're kind of just making this up as you go, trying to just visualize. I probably, if I made this again, I might make it a different way. There's not one way to make things, a lot of different ways to make it. Okay, let's snap that one in line, and we need to do the height. And the same over here. So first I need it to be horizontally aligned and then vertically aligned. And then I can bridge those. Okay, then I'm putting a mesh smooth on it just so I can see it kind of smooth. Now, it'll be really kind of Gumby looking, you know, because I don't have locking loops in it to make it nice and sharp edged. And I see students do this all the time where they'll go in and start putting their locking loops so they can get that razor sharp edge. But the thing about it is you don't want to put those locking loops in until you have the model pretty well constructed, because what will happen is you'll put them in and then you'll need to modify it and then you'll have to rip them out. So you just kind of have to go, well, okay, I'm just trying to get the basic shape, and I just know in my head that when I come back and put a locking loose, then I can make it more crisp looking. Okay, so eventually this has got to flatten out at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is grab this edge and clone it down. It's got a little lip on the front of it, so I'm going to pull it forward first. So I'm holding down the shift key. Make sure your snaps are off or it'll want to snap. And I kind of just visualizing how far this lip will go out. Looking at it from the side here. Oops. And I need it to line up with the front edge. And now I'm pulling this down to give me an edge up front, and that'll need to be flattened out. So what I'm going to do here is over make planar, and it'll be on the Y axis, and it'll make those all flat. I'm going to delete those out because this arc needs to go up a little bit higher. So I don't want it flat there. I need to flatten it up where it goes into the arc right up there. So, okay, so now I can target weld this back together. There we go. Target weld that one. Okay. All right, I need to make that vertex. Oh, I've got a vertex on the back side selected. And I'll do it this way too. Okay, we'll just line that way. Okay. So now I can target weld these across, and that looks a little bit better. And I'm just going to pull this across and just target weld that. I don't like that little point where they go together on that edge, but I'll deal with that later. It's going to cause a little bit of a pinch there. You see that little star in that corner? That's called a pole. You never really want more than 4 edges coming out. That's got 5 edges coming out. And as long as it's on a flat plane, it'll be okay. But the fact that it's on that edge is going to cause a little bit of a pucker there. So I'll end up manipulating that out of there later. It's okay for now. Okay, there's a little edge that pops out from this. So I'm just selecting these polys and doing an extrude to get that little edge that pops out in front of it. See how there's a little ledge on the front of that arc? Okay, so I'm grabbing these and pulling them out. Actually, I need to get rid of that poly right there and now grab the edges. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm just going to delete this part over here because I'll be able to use the symmetry to reclaim that. So the symmetry, and now it's an echo from one side to the other. So the left side is just an echo of the right side. So as I manipulate the right side, the left side will update. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Our mesh smooth on it. What do we got down here? Oh, it's got some polys at the bottom. I need to get rid of those. Yep, there we go. Take those out. I was just holding the shift key down. It'll grab all of them across there. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to put a solid background on this. I like that gradient. Okay, I'm going to take this symmetry and I'm going to copy it and paste it. And then I'm going to switch the axis. So it needs to be on the Z axis and then it will mirror to the back. So now it'll get me my ledge on the back of it like it was on the front. So, I mean, really what's happening with the symmetry is I'm working on 1/4 of this since it's symmetrical. I do 1/4 and then it will, I can mirror it on it, 2 axes. And I'm making 1/4 and then it's going to make the other pieces. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, I'm going to expert mode here, which is Control X to get a little bit bigger, and you can see. And that's about as far as I can get on this one, and we'll pick it back up in the next video. All right, hopefully this is helping you. Thank you.